What is up? Welcome back to Life from Mars. This is Marissa, but you can call me Mars. So guys, I am so stoked about this episode because today is the very first episode of my 31 days of Halloween. So yes, you guys may have heard me talk about it in other videos, but I'm going to be doing a video every single day for the month of October, and I'm not gonna lie, I thought this might be a little bit of an undertaking. I was a little bit afraid about this, but I honestly think I can do it, and my goal is to make all of the content Halloween, paranormal, supernatural related. So I'm really excited. I just honestly am so into paranormal stuff. I absolutely love learning about different things, blowing my own mind, finding out about different places or different phenomena. I just find it so interesting, and I genuinely don't really get afraid of it. So people think I'm kind of crazy because I can just find out all this stuff and like not even care, but I just think it's really interesting. So today, I knew that for my first day, I had to start off with a bang, okay? Of course, you know, like, I'm gonna build the hype for you guys. I want you guys to know that I got good content coming for you this month, so I knew that I just had to pull out a huge whopper right out of the gate. Today, I'm going to be talking about a location that is very possibly the most paranormal location in the entire world, and I do not say that lightly, guys. I mean, I'm talking, this place has pretty much experienced every single phenomena and any phenomena that you could possibly attribute to being supernatural. So I'm talking everything from like the classic ghosts or demons or, you know, poltergeist phenomena to disembodied voices to UFOs to orbs to everything else. Werewolves, other crazy creatures, just literally things that you couldn't even possibly imagine. Not even joking, guys, when I was researching this, there were points where I was actually laughing because the things that have conspired at this place are literally so unbelievable and terrifying that it almost sounds like it's a parody. They would never make a legitimate scary movie like this because it's just so crazy that it just seems so out of the realm of possibility that I feel like it's almost verging onto the kind of funnier plane than actually being scary, even though it is extremely real and all of it really happened, and obviously experiencing it, I'm sure nobody was laughing. Okay, so let's just say that. But I was laughing a little bit looking into it, so hopefully this will be a very enjoyable video because you guys will get to learn a lot of paranormal stuff, and it's going to be a crazy, supernatural, thrilling video filled with tons of crazy stories. But it's also going to be a little bit funny because, I don't know, I just think it's a little bit funny. So yeah, now that I have hyped it up appropriately, let's just go ahead and get started, guys, because this is probably going to be a long video. This place is a freaking doozy, okay, to say the least, okay? I promise that some of the stuff I'm going to tell you, I mean, you could not even make this shit up. Like, it is just so insane. I could never make it up. It is just off the rails, guys. Out of control supernatural activity going on. Today I'm going to be talking about Skinwalker Ranch. So I feel like nobody really knows about Skinwalker Ranch. Now, not to say that nobody knows, okay, some people do know about Skinwalker Ranch. It's actually pretty well known, I guess, in the supernatural field, in the paranormal researching field. There is a book that was written about it that is pretty much what made it notorious and made it go a little bit more mainstream. It's called Hunt for the Skinwalker. So if you guys want a more detailed explanation of what's going on here and of all of these stories that I'm about to tell, I would definitely recommend checking out the book. And there was actually recently just a documentary that came out that's also called Hunt for the Skinwalker, so you can also watch that. So to start off, I just want to tell you guys a little bit about Skinwalker Ranch, why it has the name Skinwalker Ranch, sort of the lore surrounding it, the history of this area. Skinwalker Ranch is actually located in Utah, in this area called the Uinta Basin, okay? And this area is notoriously known for being a hotbed of UFO activity. So many people have witnessed UFOs here. There have been researchers that have gone to these areas, and they say that they will not meet one person that has not either seen a UFO, had some kind of encounter. Everybody there knows that there's tons of UFOs. It's like casual. In fact, in the 60s and 70s, there was actually more UFO sightings reported in this area of Utah than anywhere else in the entire world. Okay, so there's something going on. Obviously, UFOs are attracted to this area for whatever reason. Why? Who knows? And I am not even going to speculate because I have no idea. But this area in particular, Skinwalker Ranch, just takes it to a whole new level. There's actually Native Americans that are indigenous to this region, and they are called the Utes. And so naturally, as is common with a lot of indigenous cultures and things like that, they already knew that this area was problematic, and they were actually the ones that called this area the path of the Skinwalker. Now, this idea of the Skinwalker is actually kind of common and is actually found throughout several indigenous cultures, this sort of idea. And basically, a Skinwalker is kind of like a shapeshifter. So to them, they sort of described it as these creatures that could turn into different animals or into people and then back again, that were very deceitful and overall just sort of a negative entity. So they actually do not advise any of their tribal members to go to that area. It's pretty much off limits to the native people because they knew that this area was the path of the Skinwalker and that it was just off limits. So there was already a lot of lore in this area, and it was already kind of known that there was things going on in this area that were maybe not normal. In fact, the Utes actually said that the area was cursed, and that is why these Skinwalkers were there, that there was some really bad curse on the area, and that is why they never wanted to go there. Okay, so fast forward to the 90s. Before we even get into like the original story of this family that moved in the 90s, there was actually 50 years worth of different sightings, different reports of different paranormal phenomena occurring on the property for 50 years before this family, the Gorman family, later moved in the 90s. Okay, so there was already a ton of recorded history of phenomena happening at this property. So this property was actually a very, very large property. It had several hundred acres of land. There was a river that was bordering the property on one side, and there was actually 3 old homesteads that had been built onto the property. So those were basically little homes that people had erected over the years of different people who decided to live on that property. Now, of course, all of these homesteads had been abandoned, so I guess that can tell you something, but there was basically 3 little homesteads that were sort of used as reference points for where the activity started taking place. But most notably, there was this area on the property that's called Skinwalker Ridge. The majority of the phenomena sort of seem to be centered around this area, or sort of originating from the Skinwalker Ridge itself, which was this ridge that ran through the property. So now we move on to the really, really craziness, okay guys? I'm telling you right now, if you don't like scary stuff, you might not want to watch this video. Maybe this video is not for you. You know, if you get spooked easily, you know, maybe don't watch this at night, unless you're into that kind of thing, because I am, so no judgment if you are, you know what I mean? But this is gonna start to get kind of creepy and weird, like really, really fast, so just a warning, a trigger warning to anybody out there. This is gonna be sort of intense, okay? But we're just gonna go right into it. So basically, we have this property, Skinwalker Ranch. There's all this lore around it, path of the Skinwalker, whatever. So in 1994, this family called the Gormans decided to move in. Now, I will say that Gorman is not their actual last name. Their names have been changed now just because they were originally in the media and in all the spotlight when this first started happening with their original names, but now the family has completely moved on and they really just kind of don't want to be associated with this anymore. So out of respect for the family, I'm going to use the fake name that is now being used, which is the Gormans. Okay, so the Gormans move in 1994. So Mr. Gorman, the father of the family, he was a very, very skilled rancher. I mean, he had studied this in college. They had a very, very large fleet with a lot of prized cattle. They had prized bulls, all sorts of different animals, cows, horses, very, very expensive livestock. They had several different types of animals, and this was really their dream property. Now, I will say that they were not from the area. They were not necessarily familiar with the lore surrounding the property. They really didn't know about any of this stuff. I mean, naturally, you're not going to assume that your property is like a paranormal hotspot or like a portal or something. So they decided that they definitely wanted to get this property. It seemed like an amazing opportunity for them. They poured all of their life savings into this property, and it really was just a dream come true for them. They were so, so excited when they moved into this property, but things started to get absolutely crazy pretty much right off the bat. So immediately when they got there, they did notice a couple of strange things. All of the doors had been completely bolted shut. They thought that was a little weird, but it didn't necessarily alarm any crazy red flags. And they also noticed that there was these crazy heavy chains in the front and the back of the house. They also thought that was kind of strange, but they figured, okay, maybe these people just had guard dogs, whatever have you. But they would be in for a rude awakening because crazy stuff was about to start happening, and it was just gonna get way more insane from there. So the very first day, they are really excited about this property, you know, like there's Mr. Gorman and his wife and their children, whatever, and they're, you know, just all moving in with all their animals and it's all going great. And all of a sudden, they're just casually moving in, and then, you know, they just had a casual encounter with, a werewolf, okay? Now get this, guys, I know that werewolves, I guess, seem to be sort of like, oh, that's just made up. That's just completely fictional. But they're actually reported kind of a lot, especially when it comes to like these indigenous tribes. For sure, there's a lot of sightings of gigantic wolves, okay? So basically what ends up happening is that the whole family is hanging out outside, right? They're in the process of moving in, they're doing all of this. And all of a sudden, this gigantic, huge wolf, I don't know, I picture like Jacob Black, you know what I mean? Like from Twilight, like these giant werewolves. So this giant wolf just casually prances, you know, into the little pasture and is just like, hey guys, comes up to them like nothing. Super friendly. They start petting the giant wolf, and obviously they're kind of apprehensive, but this wolf was just so casual and actually very nice, and it was almost acting like it was their pet. You know what I mean? It was like acting like it knew them, and so they weren't really that off put. They were just kind of like, oh, I mean, okay, whatever, I guess we'll just interact with this wolf for a second. They didn't think anything of it. They're not thinking like, oh, this is a giant paranormal werewolf. They're just thinking, okay, well, we're just happening to interact with an extremely large wolf. Like I said, these people are ranchers. They're no stranger to working with wild animals or anything like that, okay? So this wolf comes over, they're petting the wolf for a second. After a while, the wolf kind of like pulls away from them and goes over to the corral where they have their animals. And he grabs one of the calves by the snout. He starts pulling on the calf. So naturally, obviously at this point, the family gets kind of concerned. You know, like I said, they have really expensive cattle. Obviously, they're really not trying to lose any of their animals or anything like that. So at first, they just try to get the wolf off of it. So Mr. Gorman and his son like get these sticks. They try beating the wolf with the stick, see if it'll scare it away or if it'll at least let go of the calf, and it just refuses. It is latched onto the calf. So after a while, Mr. Gorman starts to get kind of concerned, you know, that he might actually harm or even possibly kill the calf. And so he decides that it's best if he goes and gets his gun. It's a .357 Magnum to be specific, okay? Mr. Gorman was actually a very skilled hunter as well. This is a guy that has used this gun several times, and also several times to actually purposefully harm and kill animals. You know what I mean? So he knew what he was doing. So he goes and he gets his gun and he shoots at the wolf. He shoots the wolf point blank. And the wolf doesn't even flinch. The wolf is literally completely unaffected from having just been shot. Like, he's like, oh yeah, you know, what else is new? Like, I just got shot. Like, literally doesn't even move, does not like it go with the calf. Literally, there's no noticeable effect. They didn't even see any blood. So the family's just like, what? And so naturally, Mr. Gorman's a little shaken, but you know, he figures, well, okay, I'll just shoot him again. So he shoots the wolf again. Now, finally, the wolf at least lets go of the calf, but he still looks completely unfazed. He's literally just still looking at the family like he's just like a little dog that is just waiting for them to pet him, you know what I mean? Like, he just got shot twice point blank, and the wolf is not, one, not even bleeding, two, completely unaffected, not crying, not whimpering, does not appear injured, not weak, nothing, okay? The wolf is just like chilling, like it's like no big deal, you know what I mean? Like, he just gets shot all the time, alright? So this crazy wolf is just chilling after getting shot twice in a row. So obviously at this point, you know, tension's a little high, so Mr. Gorman actually shot the wolf twice more after that. We're already up to 4 shots, and this is at a very close range, and still there is no noticeable distress coming from the wolf. The wolf is just super casual. There's absolutely no blood, no sign of injury, nothing. And so at this point, obviously, everyone's starting to freak out. This is not normal. Any animal should be taken down, or in the very least injured by these bullets, but this wolf is just chilling it. So finally, Mr. Gorman is obviously really concerned at this point, so he runs to get his huge hunting rifle, okay? So this is a way more powerful gun, specifically used for hunting, whatever. So he goes out and he shoots the wolf again, now even closer than he was before, okay? So he shoots the wolf, and now finally, basically like a chunk of flesh flies off the werewolf. Sorry, that's a little graphic, but a chunk of flesh just flies off the werewolf, and still, the werewolf is literally not even phased. And then finally, Mr. Gorman shoots the wolf yet again. So this is the 6th shot, okay? The 6th time that he's shot this wolf. The 2nd time with this huge rifle, super up close, okay? So finally, after the 6th shot, the wolf is still doesn't appear to be injured at all. There's still no blood other than this chunk of flesh that flew off. And the wolf just casually walks away. Doesn't limp, doesn't run, doesn't do anything. He literally just casually walks away, walks into the forest. They actually tried to follow this werewolf. They tried to follow the prince, but there just came a point where the prince just like basically disappeared. So they literally had no idea what happened to the werewolf. That just gives you guys a little bit of an idea of what this family was about to experience, but I'm not joking, guys. That is literally just the tip of the iceberg. It just gets so much more crazy. That's already just an absolutely insane story. If that happened to you ever in your life, that would be like the craziest thing that ever happened to you. You know what I mean? That would be something that you're telling like every day, you know what I mean? You're 100 and you're telling your grandchildren about the craziest shit that ever happened to you, you know what I mean? But that was literally just the first day of them moving in, so we still got a lot to go. It just gets crazier. So just a couple of weeks later, Mrs. Gorman sees another giant wolf. She's coming home and she pulls into the driveway, and this giant wolf out of nowhere comes next to her car. And she describes it as being so huge that the actual wolf's back was parallel with her car window, her huge truck. This werewolf was so big that its back was up to that point, okay? And apparently this wolf was also accompanied by some kind of dog-looking creature that she has yet to this day ever to be able to identify. She has no idea what that little creature was, other than it kind of looked like a dog and it was with the other werewolf. So over the next 2 years, from 1994 to 1996, they just continued to see all sorts of crazy creatures and all sorts of insane phenomena. Now, these things were witnessed by every single member of the family all the time, but not just by the family, also by neighbors, by guests that would come over, people that were trying to, you know, investigate what was going on. I mean, all sorts of people. Pretty much anybody that would go there would have some kind of experience. They just keep seeing crazier and crazier things as time goes on. So there was another instance where the Gorman family came home and they witnessed something attacking their horse. So naturally they start to freak out, and they see that it's this little creature that almost looks like a curly red-haired hyena creature, and they had no idea what it was, but it was attacking one of their horses. They said this creature was very, very low to the ground, but that it was extremely muscular, and that it looked like it could be about 200 pounds, had a huge bushy tail, and like I said, they still have yet to this day even been able to identify what this creature was, okay? This creature was literally just scratching the horse like it was playing with a toy. It was literally just scratching the horse all over like it was a joke, like it was having fun, just scratching this horse and, like, you know, mutilating this horse, whatever. Mr. Gorman starts to approach the creature and he's about to start a confrontation, whatever. And what does the creature do? It vanishes into thin air, bro. The creature just disappears like it was never there, just like poof, gone, like nothing. And so I don't even know what to say about that. That is just the kind of stuff that was happening, guys, okay? And sure enough, they obviously go up to the horse and they find all these claw marks all over the horse. They knew that they did not just hallucinate this or something. There was physical evidence that this happened, and that was pretty much true for almost every single instance like this. And actually, a few weeks after that happened, the deputy sheriff of this town, his wife, actually saw an extremely similar looking creature running through their backyard, okay? So once again, we have verified witnesses outside of the family that are witnessing this same phenomena. There was another incident where Gorman actually invited a visitor to go and meditate on the property. So he had found this man and, you know, he thought, well, I'm going to invite this guy to come over so that he can meditate on the property and maybe try to tune into some stuff that's going on, you know, maybe he can help me sort of tap into what's happening, whatever, you know, figure out what I'm experiencing here. So this guy sits down and he's meditating. While this man is meditating, Mr. Gorman and his son are also with this man, and all of a sudden, in the middle of his meditation, they all witness something that they can only describe as a blurry creature running through the trees and then through the pasture, and it just starts running up to them. And so they describe this creature to look something like the camouflage being from the Predator. Now, I've actually never seen the Predator, but I did Google this so I could get kind of an idea of what it looked like, and I'm gonna put a picture of it so you guys can see it, so that you can get a kind of an idea of what they're referring to. But basically, it was just this entity that seemed to have shape, but that was almost see-through and just kind of blurry. I don't know, super weird. You know, this guy's just meditating. He's just trying to help the Gormans out. You know what I mean? Like, he's not trying to get shook to his core. He's just trying to meditate and help them out a little bit. You know what I mean? But naturally, that's not what happens. So this huge camouflage, you know, blurry being is just running through the trees, runs through the pasture, and eventually reaches them, and then lets out this huge roar that they said was so loud that it could literally be heard hundreds of feet away. And this guy that was the visitor, you know, the meditating man, he was so freaked out. He was so scared of what had just happened that he literally fell to the floor into fetal position and grabbed onto Mr. Gorman and would not let go. It took him so long to just regain his composure and leave. He never came back because obviously, why would you go back after you experience something like that? And guys, that is not the only phenomena that they were experiencing. There would be times where they would just see tons of exotic, multicolored birds just all over the property that just seemingly came out of nowhere, that were completely not native to Utah, that belonged nowhere even in the region. I'm talking birds that are native to the other side of the world, chilling in their ranch in the middle of Utah, just out of nowhere, like there one day and then gone the next. What's that about? I don't know. What scary movie has exotic birds just appearing out of nowhere? You know what I mean? Like, what's going on with that? I don't know. Another thing that they would see huge 9-foot tall Bigfoot type beings. So you just gotta throw Bigfoot into there, you know? Like I said, you got every single paranormal thing you could possibly imagine. So what would it be without Bigfoot? Am I right? So they start seeing huge 9-foot hairy entities running across the pasture and through the trees and all that shit. Like, they start seeing Bigfoot creatures. There would be times where the entire pasture was lit up super bright. Out of nowhere, it would just get super bright and the entire pasture would be lit like it was a football field, okay? Other times, they would see huge shafts of light that seemed like they were coming out of the ground that were just like shooting into the sky. So imagine, you know, when there's like, when you go to Vegas or like when there's a club or something and you got those little lights that are all like, whee! You know, there's a party here, kind of like that, but just coming out of the ground, okay? So obviously, you know, that's just like, just a little bit concerning, just a little bit weird, you know? And there was also a lot of really small things that would happen where basically the Gormans kind of felt like this entity, whatever it was, this paranormal clusterfuck, I don't know, this paranormal situation was basically trying to mess with their minds. There was this one day where Mrs. Gorman, she had gone to get groceries. She got a week's worth of groceries, okay? So she had a ton of bags. She came home, she gets all the bags, she puts all the groceries away, whatever, and then she goes to the bathroom. She literally is gone for like 2 minutes, comes back into the kitchen, and all of the groceries are back in the bags. Who did that? Why did they put the groceries back in the bags? You know what I mean? Like, just to mess with her, just to break them down, you know? By the way, I just want to say that apparently I guess a lot of people are kind of like, why the f did the Gormans stay there? Why would they not leave after the first encounter with that werewolf thing? That would be enough for most people to be like, yo, like, we gotta go. But the thing is, like, you have to understand that obviously this family did not just necessarily assume, oh, our property is a portal to another dimension and we're gonna have every single paranormal encounter we could possibly even imagine and more. First of all. Second of all, Mr. Gorman, he was a very stubborn man. He wanted to try to be able to stay on this property. He had all this cattle. This was his dream property. They had this huge money-making opportunity. This was seriously the most ideal situation for them. So to just immediately up and move after just experiencing a couple things, it was just not really something that they were gonna do. Okay, so another really crazy story. The Gormans actually had 4 prized bulls. So these bulls were really, really big and they were prized, okay? So they were extremely expensive. And Mr. Gorman was actually professional in artificial insemination. So naturally, I guess his idea was to maybe breed these bulls, whatever. And these were like his cash. This was his big investment. These bulls were all he had. And they were even making jokes. Mr. and Mrs. Gorman would joke like, if anything ever happens to the bulls, then we're screwed. So they say that. And of course, you know, the creature, whatever it is, this entity, whatever, was like, haha, joke's on you. So they go out to the city and they come back and the bulls are gone. They're nowhere to be found. And so obviously they start freaking out. You know, they had just said, God forbid anything happened to these bulls. And naturally this being's like, oh, up next, the bulls, you know, whatever. And so they're frantically looking for these bulls. They're freaking out. And inside the little corral where the bulls were, there was this tiny metal trailer. Now, they never used this trailer. It was already there, and the door was actually wired shut. There was only one door, and it was completely wired shut with these thick wires. Just because he's freaking out and he can't find them anywhere, Mr. Gorman goes over to the trailer, and he looks through the little grate, and sure enough, he sees all 4 bulls inside the trailer, guys, okay? And keep in mind, the door is still completely wired shut and there's only one way to get in there. And the bulls are literally all crammed together, Tetris together. Can you imagine these 4 huge bulls clustered together in this tiny trailer, and he said that they just looked like they were in a trance. And they opened the door, and sure enough, there was literally cobwebs on the inside of the door because of how long it had been closed. How did the bulls get inside of there? The family would also see apparitions. They would see figures, black figures looking through their windows, and it actually started getting so bad that the entire family ended up sleeping all together in one room. They got to the point where they were all sleeping in the living room on the floor all together because they were just so terrified to be by themselves or to be watched by these creatures or whatever. So it got really, really bad. But the paranormal activity was not even limited to just them seeing things or experiencing things like that. All the time they were overwhelmed by these musky odors, this intense, overwhelming musky odor. So it was even smells and things like that. They would hear what sounded like super heavy machinery moving under the earth, all crazy. Another thing that would happen to them, which this is one of those things that I thought was a little funny. I don't know, just because it's so unfathomable, it's almost funny. There would be a lot of times where they would also hear these disembodied male voices, okay? And they sounded like they were coming from like 8 or 9 feet above their heads. Mr. Gorman would be talking to his son or to his nephew or to somebody, whatever, and they would hear these voices, and it sounded like they were speaking some other language. They had no idea what these voices were saying, but it was clearly these two male voices that were talking to each other. And one time, Mr. Gorman actually got so fed up with this, and like they had started kind of trying to fight back. And so he got so fed up with this that he actually screamed to them, "Be quiet, like be quiet." And he said that just for a second the voices stopped, and then they started talking again, and this time they were laughing and they were mocking him. They were talking in these mocking tones, pretty much just sounding like they were making fun of him, and like they were joking about what he was saying. Like they thought it was funny. These, disembodied voice entities were cracking up at the fact that this guy actually tried to talk back to them. That is just so funny to me that even these like crazy, unexplainable paranormal entities still have a sense of humor, you know what I mean? Or like still making fun of this guy. I just find that so funny, but like I said, I'm sure he was not laughing in the moment, you know what I mean? I don't know, I guess it's not actually funny, but it's a little bit funny, it's a little bit funny. Another story, there was one day where Mr. Gorman went out to the pasture and found that this huge area of his pasture had been completely dug up. So basically it was just a huge hole in the ground where a bunch of soil had been dug up and put on the edges, and he described it like somebody had gotten a giant cookie cutter and just like cut a hole out of the pasture. A giant perfect circle. Just, like get the soil out just real quick, cookie cut the field. Because that happens, like hundreds of pounds of soil are displaced like that all the time. That's nothing to be concerned about, no worry there. Another sphere of basically things that they were experiencing were UFOs and all sorts of crazy things that were associated with that. One story, one day Mr. Gorman was actually with his nephew, and they saw from across the field, this is obviously, like I said, there's hundreds of acres, so this is a big property. If you see something, you're not necessarily super close to it. You can see something from afar, whatever. And so they see this vehicle from afar, what they thought was like a recreational vehicle, maybe like, a trailer or a Jeep or an ATV of some kind, something like that, and it's just moving across the pasture. And so they start to go up to it, you know what I mean? Like they start to kind of like follow this trailer. Obviously it's their property, they want to see why somebody's there, whatever. They assume, maybe somebody had some mechanical trouble, whatever, something like that. And so they start approaching this vehicle, and it basically just keeps moving away from them. So they're trying to catch up to this vehicle, whatever. And eventually they go over this hill and they finally catch up to this vehicle, and they realize that ain't no ATV. It was literally just a craft, and they said that it looked like a refrigerator. What? But they said it literally looked like a refrigerator, and that it had one light in the front and then one red light in the back, and then it just sat there for a second and then just shot up into the air. Like flying refrigerator UFOs do. So obviously at this point the phenomena is just getting so frequent that every single member of the family is experiencing these things. For example, a bunch of the family members, they would always see this one cloud that looked like it had Christmas lights in it. Like little flickering, little multicolored explosions going on in it. Just, casual multicolored exploding, flickering clouds. They would always see all sorts of type of UFOs. So they would see the traditional flying saucers, they would see huge cigar-shaped objects, some of which which they described as being several football fields long, all of which had no sound, by the way. The flying refrigerator also made no sound. They even saw what they described as flying sombreros. Can you guys imagine just seeing flying sombreros? It's just like, to them, that was just another day on the homestead. One of the neighbors would report that he would see this giant basketball-shaped object just floating through the sky above the property. So they were just seeing all sorts of crazy flying stuff. What really started to get crazy was when they started seeing orbs and like these crazy sphere objects. So basically it first started where they had 12 different incidents that they reported where they would see these giant orange sphere objects that would sometimes make holes inside and where other little orbs would come out of them. Okay, so almost like little portals or something like that. That's how I could, I guess, interpret them to be. Whatever, who knows what they really were, but that they would always just see them in the sky or in the trees or whatever. And eventually they started seeing these little orb sphere things everywhere. They were there all the time, always following them, always messing with their cattle, always there. And they said that they were like these little orange spheres that were filled with like this blue bubbling liquid that seemed to be kind of rotating inside of the sphere, and that these spheres definitely seemed intelligent. They knew what was up and that they were aware of the way that they were moving. They were extremely fast, and these spheres would actually be the reason that they eventually decided to move out of the property. So there was one incident, for example, where they actually saw one of these orbs float around one of their horses' heads several times, and then all of a sudden this horse just starts radiating this intense blue light, and there was just like this static electricity sound in the air, and then all of a sudden it just darts up and the horse is just left there all dazed. And these orbs also seem to have kind of some sort of psychological effect, because the family members would say that whenever these orbs were around, they would just get this intense anxiety and fear, and that it literally felt like these things were controlling them psychologically. They could inflict fear upon them. Finally, in 1996, they actually finally decided to move out. So like I said, these balls of light, or these orbs or whatever, would always seem to be particularly attracted to their cattle and to their animals. They unfortunately actually experienced several cases of cattle mutilation. Okay, so you guys might know, if you know anything about ufology or they study paranormal or alien activity, that cattle mutilation is actually extremely common when referenced with UFO activity. So naturally, of course, if there's going to be all this paranormal activity, of course you got to throw in the cattle mutilation there too. So they would actually have several incidences where they would have cows or cattle or horses or whatever, these animals that would be completely mutilated, would have limbs cut off, would have their ears and their eyes removed, they would have their sex organs removed or their horns removed or whatever, and that it was with such surgical precision that it was just absolutely insane. There was no way that it was an animal attack. Like I said, Mr. Gorman was extremely knowledgeable about these things, and he knew this was not an animal. There would be no blood, no sign of any kind of struggle. It was just so strange. I'm talking, they would find some kind of mutilated animal in the middle of the snowfield, and there's no blood. There's no blood on this white snow. They would say that it was like the animal got taken somewhere else and then just got placed back there. You know what I mean? But a lot of the times this would happen in the matter of like 5 minutes, okay? For example, there was this one instance where Mr. Gorman's son, he went out and he went and checked on this one cow, okay? He leaves. 5 minutes later, he comes back and the cow is mutilated, okay? And like I said, this is kind of violent. This is probably one of the most, I guess, graphic parts of the video, okay? So I do apologize. Maybe fast forward through this part if you don't want to hear it. But basically, they go back out and they find this poor cow with a huge hole in its rectum area, okay? And this hole is about 6 inches wide and about 18 inches deep. But once again, there's no blood around the horse. It actually got to the point where out of their 80 cattle herd, they had lost 14 of these cattle, okay? And so for them, this was causing them a lot of financial issues. It was just getting really bad. These entities were targeting and attacking their animals, and that was their livelihood. That was not an option for the Gormans. There was one day where all 6 of the family's cats went missing in one day. One day they were just all gone. But what actually finally got the Gormans to move out was an incident with their dogs. And so, you know, obviously guys, I love animals. I love dogs. I love all animals. So this is obviously kind of hard to hear, but this is just what happened. So I'm just telling you guys the story, okay? So basically, one day these orbs are flying around, and Mr. Gorman, like I said, he was kind of starting to get really frustrated. So they did kind of try to fight against these things, but obviously it kind of backfired for them. So he decides to send his dogs off to fight these orbs, whatever, 3 of his dogs. And so these dogs start chasing and barking and trying to bite at this orb, whatever. And they end up chasing this orb into this little, you know, vegetated, overgrown area. And a couple of minutes later, Mr. Gorman just hears what he describes as 3 horrifying, terrifying shrieks come out of these dogs, and then just silence. Silence, nothing. And so he calls for the dogs, and he's like calling for them, and they don't come. So the next morning, he decides to go look for them, you see what happened, and he goes to the area where the dogs had ran into the brush, whatever. And he finds 3 perfect circles of hardened, dead, dried vegetation. And in the very center, he just saw these huge, greasy, black lumps of something, okay? And needless to say, he never saw the dogs again. He assumed that these dogs had just been incinerated by something, and that is finally what prompted the Gormans to actually move out of their home. By now, there was already a lot of media coverage of this, especially locally. All of the locals were aware of what was going on. They had reached out to the media already. This was already a circulating story, and so eventually it got the attention of Robert Bigelow. So Robert Bigelow is actually a billionaire that had been financing a lot of different paranormal scientific research, and he actually founded this thing called NINS, which was the National Institute for the Discovery of Science. Okay, so he was financing this actual national scientific program. This program was the elite of the elite. They had world-class scientists, physicists, biologists, veterinarians, you name it, astronauts, literally, all sorts of incredibly smart people. And they basically decided that they were going to buy the ranch and that they were going to start investigating. And they started what would then become a 7-year investigation, a nationally funded investigation into the paranormal activity at Skinwalker Ranch. And let me tell you guys, the craziness did not stop. Of course, these are scientists. Obviously, they're going to try to present some kind of logical explanation. And so they start trying to see if maybe that there's some sort of plant explanation, that there is some sort of plant that's causing hallucinations, whatever. They start looking into the water, into the air, into the soil quality. They look into an animal explanation. I mean, they basically eliminated any possible obvious explanation right off the bat. And so from there, they decided to put 24-hour surveillance on the entire ranch. So they had cameras, they had microphones all over the ranch for several years, 24-hour surveillance, okay? But it seemed like these creatures were so intelligent that they would purposefully avoid these cameras. There would be cases where a camera would be knocked off and then they would experience something, or they would place the camera in one field and then something would happen in the field next to it, and then they would switch it and it would switch. It became very obvious to them very quickly that they were dealing with something that was intelligent and something that was cognitive. They knew that this thing was playing mind games with them, and it actually started to get them kind of crazy. These are scientists, and they have this entity that they can't even begin to explain that's messing with them. And they actually described this entity, this paranormal situation, whatever, as a precognitive sentient entity. So basically something that can anticipate things, something that understands and has cognitive abilities, sentient, so conscious being, so entity or whatever. So something that was very consciously aware of what was going on, that could think about what was going on, and that could plan and also anticipate things that were going to happen. Okay, so this is something that the scientists realized, and obviously they all had crazy experiences. They would see things all the time. They saw like black demonic creatures running across the field. They obviously had all the encounters with the orbs. They also had experiences of cattle mutilation. Nance is here and they have no idea what's going on. They're also just being played with and toyed with by this entity. Like, they don't even understand what's happening anymore. They were trying everything. They were bringing in professional trackers to try and track these creatures that they would see, like try to track down what was causing the mutilations to the cattle. Once again, there was never any blood. Once again, there was always that disgusting, like, hot, musky smell going on everywhere, and they could never find any sort of source or any sort of explanation as to why that was happening. One story of something that they saw, Mr. Gorman was actually on the property with them because he still really wanted to go, and honestly guys, after a while he kind of started to develop this sort of like vendetta against these entities. He just wanted to defeat them because they basically had crushed his dreams, you know what I mean? I get it. So he was actually there a lot during the time that NIDS was researching and whatever. So he was there and he's with the NIDS team, and they see this creature, this gigantic creature in the trees, right? This creature had what they describe as foot-long eyes. Can you imagine, like, foot-long, huge eyes that were yellow, these huge foot-long yellow eyes, and this creature is just up in the tree, and on the floor was this kind of bear-like creature that was with it. And so Mr. Gorman, he's in his car and the SIDS team is behind him, and they drive out to where they see this, and Mr. Gorman immediately gets out of his car, he gets his gun, and he shoots at the bear thing first. And what does it do? It vanishes, of course. It just vanishes into thin air. And this time the entire NIDS team witnessed this thing just vanish out of nowhere. And then, so, you know, not missing a beat because he's used to that kind of thing because that's just casual to him now, he decides to shoot the thing that's in the trees, the giant thing with the huge eyes. And so this thing actually falls to the ground. It doesn't just disappear, it actually falls to the ground, but then he gets up and it just runs out into the forest. And so they start trying to follow this thing, but they never found anything. All that they found was one giant footprint, okay? And they described it to be something like a raptor footprint. Like, it was just like a huge, almost dinosaur-like footprint, okay? And once again, they brought in experts to analyze this. Like, they had biologists and veterinarians, zoologists, whatever, all of these people that were professionals in this field that had no idea, could not identify this animal, had no idea what it was, and the professional trackers could not track this animal, had no idea where this creature had gone. So, you know, my guess is that it's not an animal and that it's probably something paranormal because, you know, that's just a guess, it's just a hunch, you know. So yes, guys, like I said, this research went on with NIDS for over 7 years, okay? They had a home base of people, they had physicists, astronauts, like I said, veterinarians, biologists, you name it. Every single scientist that was at the top of their field, former government employees, like all sorts of people that were working on this, and they never came to any sort of conclusion. They never ever got any concrete answers to what was going on at Skinwalker Ranch. And I will tell you guys, this was actually one of the absolute largest paranormal investigations to ever happen. Ever, much less be sponsored by a national agency. I will say that NIDS is actually no longer in existence and that they did replace it with a different national scientific institute that does do similar research as well. Okay, so yeah, so they never found any answers. The NIDS team knew that they eliminated every single obvious explanation, every single thing that made sense to like a logical scientific viewpoint, anything that could possibly make sense based on normal, you know, quote unquote normal science, whatever. Nothing could be connected, nothing made sense. And also it didn't make sense how all these things were connected. And that is one thing that they did take away from it, is that it seemed like all these things were somehow connected and that it all kind of originated from the same source. And so that sort of made them ponder, you know, maybe a lot of what we experience of as far as paranormal and supernatural phenomena is connected, and that, you know, it's this sort of working that is so much grander that we can understand, and these entities perhaps live in different dimensions or whatever. And basically at the end, that is kind of the conclusion that they drew, and that's the conclusion that is sort of pointed at the end of the book, at the end of the Hunt for a Skinwalker book. And that is kind of the only logical conclusion that a lot of these people could come to, and the only kind of general consensus. And that was that this property is some sort of portal, that it is some sort of portal to another dimension, that there are entities that can come in and out of that portal, and that they can interact with the physical world, that they're very sentient. They never physically harmed one human being. So even though they killed and mutilated and like disintegrated all these animals and did all these crazy physical things to all of these other animals, never once did they actually physically harm a human, which is really kind of weird and interesting. And you know, who knows why that is. They just psychologically tortured them, and I don't know. I don't know how to explain that, but that is definitely something that also happened. In the book, they do use this analogy of basically saying that if there's an anthill next to a 10-lane highway, do the ants understand what's going on right next to them? And I guess that's kind of the way they look at it with Skinwalker Ranch, is like, we're just these humans that think that we have an understanding of the universe and think that we have an understanding of the way everything works, but we really don't, you know. And we know that there's multiple universes, and that time doesn't really exist, and that there's multiple dimensions of space, and that there's very, very likely several different forms of life, of conscious entities that could be millions or even billions of years ahead of us as far as, you know, evolution and all of that. So really, there's just so many endless, countless possibilities as to what could be happening here, and it's just absolutely insane, guys. So believe it or not, I actually did not even tell all of the stories that there are to tell. There's literally just so much stuff that has gone down there that I feel like every single time I look into this, or every single time I watch an interview about this, whatever, I learn more stories and more crazy things that would happen on Skinwalker Ranch, guys. Like, it is absolutely insane. That being said, you cannot go there. Please do not try to go there, okay? Like, don't do that. It is completely blocked off. People were going a lot, especially once it got more media attention. People would go and try to have UFO sightings and all of that. Obviously, that is highly not recommended because it's definitely not a safe place to be, but also it's completely blocked off, so you can definitely not go there. It is actually still privately owned by Robert Bigelow, so it is private property, and obviously I don't recommend going there anyway unless you're trying to, you know, scar yourself for life. But, you know, just in case you need the reminder, please do not go there, okay? So yeah, the Gorman family did move out. They did relocate, and I don't exactly know where they are now, but like I said, I do know that they basically just kind of tried to disconnect at this point. I mean, you can imagine when you experience something like that in your life, and when, you know, you have this place which was supposed to be a home for you and supposed to be this dream opportunity for you, and it just ends up going so terrifyingly, horribly wrong. I mean, that can be really difficult. I can only imagine having to cope with that. Yeah, that is all I have for today's video, guys. I hope you enjoyed this really casual, low-key, hilarious, comedic, not at all scary story. I definitely would encourage you guys to look into Skinwalker Ranch. I find it so interesting, and I do just want to say, obviously, this is definitely something that a lot of people would probably be afraid of. I feel like when I start talking about this kind of thing, people are just like, whoa, and they don't even want to hear it. They just kind of shut off, you know what I mean? But it really does not have to be something that you are super afraid of. I honestly feel like knowledge is power, and so I sort of feel that I would rather know about these things so that if I ever do have any sort of encounter or any sort of experience, that I can at least kind of understand what's happening to me rather than just being completely shocked and then falling into fear. I don't think that it necessarily has to be feared. I think that it's obviously something that needs to be acknowledged, and I definitely think that it should be taken more seriously scientifically, but I don't think that it's something that needs to be sort of associated with like this deep brooding fear. And I think that it's really amazing that this place was actually acknowledged scientifically, and that it's sort of opening the conversation for more scientists to actually begin to question paranormal events, and also acknowledge that paranormal things are happening all the time all around the world, and that people have sightings of all of these things and experiences of all these things all the time. There's so much evidence for it. I frankly think that the idea that it's seen as supernatural is kind of ridiculous, because it's obviously natural. It's happening in the natural world. It's not paranormal. It's just not based on what we think is normal as like a colonized Western society. You know what I mean? Because like I said, most indigenous tribes, most indigenous people have stories of these sort of like paranormal entities or other dimensional entities existing, but it's just in our Western colonized world that we're believed to make just think that these things are just, you know, the work of movies, and that this is just fictional, and that, you know, if you experience this kind of thing that you're just imagining it, or that you're crazy. But I think that that's really problematic, and I think that we need to remove that stigma and just acknowledge that this world is crazy, and that crazy things happen, and that, you know, maybe some places are more prone to have paranormal activity, and that there's just a lot more to this world that we don't understand. So I really hope that you guys liked this video. Please comment and let me know what you guys thought. Let me know if you guys know any other stories from either the Utah Basin or maybe from Skinwalker Ranch. Like, did you guys already know about this? Because I feel like most people don't, which I honestly find kind of crazy, especially considering the insane amount of stuff that has happened there. But like I said, even if you haven't heard about Skinwalker Ranch, you can order the book, Hunt for the Skinwalker. You can watch the movie, the documentary Hunt for the Skinwalker, which actually was partially filmed while NIDS was investigating it, so that's really, really cool. So you can watch the film, you can read the book, or if you just literally type in Skinwalker Ranch on YouTube, there's tons of documentaries, tons of interviews where they go into more elaborate stories, all of that. So there's a ton of information out there. So if you guys want to dive down the rabbit hole, I've already done it, so go right ahead. More power to you. I would really also appreciate it if you guys would give me any suggestions you have for other things that I should talk about this October. Let me know what you guys want me to talk about. If there's another place that you think is really cool, maybe some sort of story or some kind of, like, I don't know, anything paranormal, or really just anything Halloween related. I think I'm gonna do some DIYs, maybe some makeup, some costume work, some Halloween cocktails, and of course tons of paranormal stuff. So I'm really, really excited. I hope you guys have a really lovely day. I hope that all of you are in a nice safe place where you don't have to deal with flying orbs or flying refrigerators or anything like that. I hope you're in a nice, secure, comfortable place, or that at least your ghosts are nice if you do have some, you know, like some nice Caspers or something like that. Thank you guys so much for watching. I absolutely love you guys. I'm so excited for you guys to see the rest of my videos for October. I have so much more coming. I'm going to be ghost hunting. I'm just going to be doing all sorts of crazy things, so just stay tuned. It's about to be so hype, okay? Please like this video, share it with your friends if you enjoyed it, send this to somebody you want to scare, or, you know, just give them a laugh or whatever, make it an inside joke with your friends. I don't know. If you guys are not already subscribed to my channel, please do subscribe. You can click the button right on the side of the little video, or you can click the button below and go ahead and subscribe. That way you guys can keep up to date with all my videos. If you'd like, turn on the little bell so you get a notification for when I do post. And like I said, I'm making a video every single day this month, so you can get the notification for every single time that I post this month. I seriously so appreciate you guys watching my channel and supporting me. It seriously means so much to me. I truly do love making content for you guys, and I love sharing this information with you guys. So please do subscribe if you enjoy my channel. Stay tuned for more paranormal content. Have a beautiful rest of your day, and I will see you tomorrow.